The Royal Grand Hotel's executive dining room was a cathedral of quiet power. Conversations hummed in low, cultured tones. Crystal glassware caught candlelight like captured stars. Boston Harbor glittered beyond the panoramic windows, ships ghosting past the skyline, as though even the sea deferred to the elite who dined above it. At the corner table, his corner table, Gabriel Montero checked his Patek Philippe for the third time in 5 minutes. 7:30 p.m. on the dot, right on schedule. He had built his life on the illusion that schedules could control chaos. He was 32, the youngest CEO in luxury hospitality to make Forbes 30 under 30. 2 years later, he doubled his empire's value and transformed family inheritance into something that looked like destiny. The Royal Grand was his flagship, marble, glass, and discretion. And tonight it would host the most important dinner of his quarter. 3 Saudi investors ready to commit $500 million to his Dubai expansion. Except they were late, 15 minutes late, and Gabriel Montero despised lateness almost as much as weakness. "Mr. Montero," murmured the maitre d', bowing slightly, "your usual table is ready." "Bring the Chateau Lafite 2010, Gabriel said, sliding into the leather booth, "and tell the kitchen to prepare the Arabian spiced lamb. My guests will appreciate the gesture." "As you wish, sir." He loosened his cufflinks, the tiny golden M winking under soft light. Everything about Gabriel was tailored and controlled. His midnight blue Tom Ford suit, his perfect posture, the faint scent of cedar and ambition that clung to him like a second skin. The waitress approached. He noticed her immediately, not because of beauty, though she had it in a quiet, disarming way, but because she moved differently. No clumsy shuffle of trays, no tentative steps. Graceful, composed, a stillness that spoke of discipline. Her brown hair was pulled into a neat twist, no stray strands, her uniform immaculate. Her name tag read simply, Sophia. "Good evening, sir," she said. Her voice was soft but precise, every syllable measured. "Would you like sparkling or still water while you wait?" Her diction snagged his attention. Not the accent, there wasn't one, but the clarity. English spoken by someone who'd studied it, not merely learned it. He couldn't place her origin. "Still," he said, "and tell the chef about the lamb. Saffron rice, pine nuts, pomegranate reduction." She didn't write it down, just met his gaze and said, "Yes, sir. Arabian spice lamb with saffron rice, pine nuts, and pomegranate reduction." A flicker of irritation, then curiosity. "Do you always remember orders without notes?" "I remember everything," she said simply. She turned to leave, but her phone buzzed from the pocket of her apron, a soft vibration, quick glance, hesitation. "Excuse me," she murmured, "it's the kitchen." He waved her off, already opening the sleek black portfolio that contained his investment proposals. But as she slipped through the service corridor, he heard her voice again, and froze. She was speaking Arabic, not conversational Arabic, not the kind hotel staff picked up from international guests. This was formal Arabic, precise and elegant, the kind used by diplomats, ministers, and translators in high-level negotiations. Her tone was clipped, commanding. "Audi, lala amal mahum, hathakalas takalaftu anhum." "No, I don't work with them anymore. It's over. I'm done." Gabriel spoke 4 languages fluently, including business-level Arabic, a necessity in his field. But this was native, political, refined. He sat motionless, every instinct sharpened. When she returned moments later, he was still watching her. "Your water, sir," she said, as if nothing had happened. "That wasn't the kitchen," he said quietly. Her hand stilled for the briefest second. Then she set the glass down with practiced calm. "I apologize for the disturbance. You were speaking Arabic, diplomatic Arabic." His tone softened, but his eyes didn't. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" Sophia's face didn't change, but color drained slightly from her cheeks. "I studied languages in college, sir." A lie, or not the whole truth. Before he could press, his phone rang. The investor's flight had been grounded in New York. Dinner canceled. $250 million and weeks of planning. Gone because of weather. He ended the call with surgical detachment. The only sign of anger the tightening of his jaw. "Shall I cancel the special preparation?" she asked. He hesitated. "No. I'll dine alone." Then before he could stop himself, "And you'll join me." Her brows lifted. "Sir, I'm working. I can't." You can, he said. Consider it a job interview. That would be inappropriate, she countered, and for the first time he heard steel under her politeness. I own the hotel, he replied smoothly. Your job is safe. Something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, defiance, self-preservation. 5 minutes, she said finally, and I'll remain standing. 10, and you sit. The faintest smile ghosted across her lips. 7, and I'll sit. It was absurd, and yet somehow the first real negotiation he'd enjoyed in months. When she returned with his plate and reluctantly sat, he studied her openly. Everything about her posture, her stillness was trained, not rehearsed. Trained. He noticed a small scar across her right knuckles, a thin, white crescent, the kind that spoke of either survival or violence. You're not just a waitress, he said. She held his gaze. I serve food and beverages for payment. That makes me a waitress. Your Arabic is diplomatic level. Your posture military. You carry yourself like someone who's dined at these tables, not served them. Her blue eyes met his without flinching. Then perhaps I've simply observed well. Silence stretched, thick as silk. Outside, the harbor lights blinked like distant lighthouses. Who are you, Sophia? He asked again. Her answer was quiet and final. Someone who needed to disappear for a while. This job lets me be invisible. You're not invisible, Gabriel said, surprising himself with the softness in his tone. Not to me. Her mask slipped, just for an instant. Then she stood, smoothing her uniform. My 7 minutes are up, Mr. Montero. Enjoy your meal. As she walked away, he watched her reflection fade into the glass, the ocean behind her swallowing her silhouette. He didn't believe in fate. He believed in logic, control, contracts, predictable returns. But as her voice lingered in his mind, Arabic syllables like secrets whispered through locked doors, Gabriel Montero realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, he wanted to know someone he couldn't immediately understand. And that, in his world, was the most dangerous desire of all. 3 days passed, and yet Gabriel Montero couldn't stop hearing her voice. Arabic, like silk and steel, echoing through his mind. He told himself it was curiosity. He lied to himself, as powerful men often do. At 1 p.m. on the third day, he made a rare decision. He would take lunch in the main restaurant rather than the private executive dining suite. His official reason? Quality inspection. His real one, a waitress who spoke diplomatic Arabic as if she had once spoken to kings. The Royal Grand's midday hum was more chaotic than its evening hush. Tourists snapping photos of chandeliers, businessmen hunched over phones, a faint buzz of espresso machines. Gabriel moved through it like a shark gliding through coral, calm but purposeful. He didn't have to look long. There she was, Sophia. Hair pulled back again, the same unassuming uniform. But the moment she began to speak to a table of Japanese businessmen, the disguise cracked. Her voice flowed in fluent Japanese, quick, polished, natural. Gabriel froze mid-step, half convinced he'd misheard. Then he caught the delighted laughter of the businessmen, their surprised bows of respect. A waitress, speaking to them as if she'd been born in Tokyo. Arabic, now Japanese. Who the hell was she? When she finally turned, she saw him watching. The recognition flickered across her face like a candle in a storm, gone in an instant, replaced by that immaculate composure. Good afternoon, Mr. Montero, she said as she approached. Would you like to hear today's specials? He didn't bother with pretense. How many languages do you speak? A pause. The restaurant noise dimmed around them, as though waiting. 6 fluently, she said finally. 2 more conversationally. 8. He leaned back, studying her as though she were a rare artifact that had wandered into his empire by mistake. And you're serving club sandwiches. Something flickered behind her calm mask. Pride? Defiance? There's dignity in all honest work, Mr. Montero. I never said otherwise. His tone softened slightly. But you're overqualified. Perhaps I'm exactly where I need to be. She tilted her chin, a small rebellion. So, shall I bring your usual? No, he said, dinner. Tonight, with me. Her brows lifted, amusement barely visible. That would be inappropriate. Not if it's professional. You make all your professional invitations sound like confessions, she replied evenly. I'll have to decline. He almost smiled. Almost. You know who I am. I make it a habit to know the people I serve. Her eyes flicked up, assessing him with the precision of someone who once studied profiles for a living. Gabriel Montero, 32, CEO of Montero Luxury Hotels and Resorts, estimated net worth $4.8 billion, expanded into Middle Eastern markets 5 years ago. Forbes cover, Harvard graduate, fluent in 4 languages, and, according to business gossip, difficult to work for and impossible to please. He blinked once. You did your homework. I read. Her tone was neutral, but he caught the ghost of irony. The business press is thorough, and yet you still turn me down. Perhaps because I know exactly who you are. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Before he could respond, the air in the room shifted, the way it does before lightning. Gabriel, darling. The voice cut through the restaurant like a perfume-soaked knife. He closed his eyes briefly. Charlotte Watson. She entered the room in designer heels and the confidence of someone born to be admired. His former fiancée, daughter of Stephen Watson, his company's second-largest investor. Her arrival was never coincidence. It was a calculated ambush wrapped in diamonds. Charlotte, he said, rising automatically. His politeness had the efficiency of a trained soldier. Unexpected. She smiled the way predators smile when prey pretends not to notice. You've been avoiding me. Her gaze swept over Sophia, dismissive in a single, cutting glance. Private conversation needed. Daddy's worried about your Dubai numbers. Sophia began to step away, but Gabriel spoke before she could. We'll finish our conversation later, he said, eyes still on Charlotte. Charlotte's laugh was brittle. Please tell me you weren't actually talking to the help, Gabriel. If you need company, there are agencies for that. Sophia didn't flinch. Her professionalism held like glass in sunlight, but Gabriel saw the faint tightening in her shoulders. The smallest recoil quickly mastered. That's enough, Charlotte. His voice was low but sharp. Miss Williams was assisting me with something. Of course she was. Charlotte smiled, syrup over venom. Let's not keep my father waiting. As Charlotte swept toward the elevator, Gabriel caught Sophia's gaze across the room. No words, just the unspoken acknowledgement that he had failed to shield her from humiliation and that she, somehow, didn't blame him. Later that afternoon, Gabriel found himself in the hotel's kitchen, an unlikely place for a CEO. He claimed it was to review menu updates. Truth, he wanted to find her. He found her alone in the break room, pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice, soft, urgent, slipped into French this time. Je ne peux pas revenir. C'est trop dangereux. I cannot come back. It's too dangerous. She froze mid-sentence when she saw him in the doorway. Slowly, she ended the call. Eavesdropping, Mr. Montero, she asked, tone cool but not entirely steady. In my own hotel? He managed a half-smile. No need. Then what do you want? The truth. She crossed her arms, chin high. About what? Who you are. Why you speak like a diplomat. And why you sound like someone running from ghosts. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Not here, she said quietly. Some walls have ears. He nodded once. My office. 9 o'clock. She hesitated the way a fugitive does before stepping into light. Then she said, fine. At precisely 9 p.m., his door opened. Sophia entered, still in her uniform but with her hair loose this time. It fell around her shoulders in soft, uncalculated waves. For the first time, Gabriel saw the woman beneath the disguise. She closed the door behind her and stood as though she were testifying in court. You wanted honesty, she said, but I need assurances first. Whatever I tell you stays between us. My job remains safe. You have my word, he said simply. She studied him for a long moment, searching for cracks. Then she sat, folding her hands in her lap. My real name is Sophia Nazar Williams, she said. My mother was American, my father Lebanese. I was an interpreter for the U.S. State Department, specializing in Middle Eastern affairs. Gabriel leaned forward, pulse steady but sharp. Was? Until 3 years ago, she said, when I was accused of leaking classified information during nuclear negotiations with Iran. Did you? No. The word cut the air cleanly. But the truth didn't matter. Someone needed a scapegoat. I was convenient. She looked up, and in her eyes he saw the hollow places built by betrayal. I lost everything: career, reputation, friends. My security clearance was revoked. My name, poison. So I came here because no one looks at a waitress." Silence settled. He wanted to say something comforting, but nothing sounded sufficient. "So," she said finally with quiet irony, "that's who I am. A ghost who still needs to pay rent." Gabriel sat back slowly, studying her. "You're more than that." Her mouth curved faintly. "You barely know me." "I know injustice when I see it," he said softly, "and I know power when it hides in plain sight." For a moment, the world outside the glass walls of his office ceased to exist. Just two people, shadows and city lights, both pretending they weren't moved. "Then what happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "you stop hiding. Work for me, not as a waitress, as something more valuable." Sophia stared at him, disbelief and longing warring behind her composure. And for the first time in years, Gabriel Montero felt like he wasn't offering employment. He was offering redemption for both of them. The next morning, Gabriel Montero made an offer no hotel waitress had ever received: a private consulting position, no public record, direct access to him, double the pay of any senior manager. The HR director nearly fainted when told the paperwork would remain off the system. Sophia read the unsigned contract in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. "I have conditions," she said. "Go on. No public-facing work, no board oversight. My employment stays confidential." Gabriel studied her. "You're still afraid." She shook her head, cautious. "Fear keeps people alive, caution keeps them free." He signed the papers without another word. That afternoon, they met in a quiet corner of the Boston Public Library, marble lions guarding the entrance like ancient sentinels. Light pooled across the wooden tables where they sat, two ghosts pretending to be ordinary. Sophia slid a folder toward him. "My real resume," she said. Gabriel skimmed the pages, his eyes widening slightly with each line. Georgetown, Yale, fluent in Arabic, Farsi, French, Japanese, Russian, Portuguese, conversational Mandarin and Turkish, 5 years at the State Department, senior interpreter. It was the profile of someone trained to navigate wars with words. He looked up. "You were extraordinary." "I was useful," she corrected. "Until I wasn't." She closed the folder. "So tell me, Mr. Montero, why does a hotel magnate suddenly need a multilingual consultant?" "Because my expansion into the Middle East has become complicated," he said. "And because I believe in second chances." Her lips curved, half gratitude, half disbelief. "You're either generous or reckless." "Maybe both," he admitted. They ended up at a small Lebanese cafe near Copley Square. The owner lit up when Sophia ordered in flawless Arabic, sending extra plates their way for the lady who speaks like home. As they ate, Gabriel noticed how she came alive, her gestures fluid, her laughter quiet but real. For a moment, she wasn't the ghost of a scandal. She was simply a woman tasting normalcy again. "You're smiling," she said suddenly, catching him off guard. "I don't do that often," he confessed. "Maybe you should. It makes you look less impossible." He almost laughed, almost. When the check came, he reached for it. Sophia's hand brushed his. The contact was brief but electric. Both of them pretended not to notice. By the time he returned to his office, reality had caught up. His assistant intercepted him with a worried expression. "Mr. Watson's here, with lawyers." Gabriel's jaw tightened. Stephen Watson, his ex-fiance's father, major investor, and perpetual thorn in his side. "Show him in." The meeting was short, venom disguised as courtesy. Watson raised concerns about the Dubai project, hinted at withdrawing funding, and dropped Charlotte's name like a gauntlet. When the door finally shut behind them, Gabriel stared out at the harbor. The city looked calm. It was lying. He thought of Sophia's words, "Caution keeps people free." That evening, he found himself back in his penthouse kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stirring risotto. The scent of white wine and parmesan filled the air. Cooking had always been his rebellion against control, one act he could do without spreadsheets or strategy. Sophia arrived quietly, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. Out of uniform, she looked entirely different. Still graceful, but human. Real. "I didn't expect you to actually cook," she said, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Some things shouldn't be delegated," he replied, tasting the sauce. "Like what?" Negotiating your own deals, reading your own contracts, making your own risotto. She laughed softly, the sound surprising both of them. They ate at the counter, the city glittering beyond the glass. Conversation flowed. Childhoods, losses, dreams that once had names. When she spoke of her mother's death, he noticed her voice trembled only once. When he mentioned his father's heart attack, she listened without pity. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, face draining of color. "Excuse me," she murmured, stepping into the hall. Gabriel followed quietly to the doorway. He caught a few words in French, rapid, tense. "Je t'ai dit de ne pas m'appeler. C'est trop dangereux." "I told you not to call me. It's too dangerous." When she returned, he was waiting. "Who was that?" "No one who matters," she said, avoiding his eyes. "You're lying," he said softly. "Would it make a difference if I weren't?" Silence stretched. Then she met his gaze. Defiant, afraid, tired. "Not every truth needs to be told at once, Mr. Montero." He nodded slowly. "Then start with this. Are you in danger?" Her lips parted, then closed again. "Maybe." He took a step closer. "Then you're not facing it alone." For the first time, she didn't argue. Later, when she'd gone and the apartment fell silent, Gabriel found her glass still on the counter, half full, her fingerprint faint against the crystal. He stared at it for a long time, the weight of it anchoring him. Something had changed. She was no longer a puzzle to solve. She was a responsibility he didn't understand, and a danger he no longer wanted to avoid. Outside, Boston glittered, serene and deceitful. Inside, Gabriel Montero poured himself another glass of wine and admitted the truth no CEO ever likes to face. He was no longer in control. 5 days had passed since that night in Gabriel's penthouse. 5 days without a call. 5 days of silence heavy enough to sound like betrayal. He told himself she needed space, that perhaps he'd pressed too hard. But each morning, his eyes went first to the hotel's daily staff roster, hoping, then hating himself for hoping. Her name was gone. Sophia Williams. Resigned. Effective immediately. No forwarding address. Gabriel Montero didn't believe in coincidences. Not in business. And certainly not in women who spoke 8 languages and vanished the moment someone called them valuable. That afternoon, while reviewing expansion contracts, his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, there's a man here to see you. Says it's urgent. He won't give a last name. Just Daniels." Gabriel's instincts stiffened. "Send him in." The man who entered didn't move like a lawyer or a journalist. He moved like a soldier forced into a suit. Controlled, economical, dangerous. His eyes swept the room once, recording exits. "Mr. Montero," he said, flashing a leather badge so fast only the letters mattered. "DSS, Department of Diplomatic Security. I believe we have a mutual concern. Her name is Sophia Nazar Williams." Gabriel's pulse quickened. "Where is she?" Daniels hesitated. "That's complicated. She reached out to me last night, briefly, before she went dark again. She believes the people who framed her have found her. The same ones who—" "Yes." Daniel's voice was grim. "Blackwater Ridge Security, a private military contractor, deep pockets, deeper friends. 3 years ago, Sophia intercepted communications exposing their illegal arms operations, covert deals disguised as agricultural exports. That discovery cost her everything." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "You're saying they're hunting her?" "I'm saying they've silenced people for less." Daniels placed a burner phone on the desk. "She said she trusts you. If she calls, use this. And for your own sake, keep this between us." The agent turned to leave, but Gabriel's voice stopped him. "Why me?" Daniels met his eyes. "Because she believes you're not like the rest. Don't prove her wrong." When the door shut, Gabriel stared at the small black phone on his desk, a lifeline, or a fuse. Either way, he knew he'd answer. The call came 3 nights later, a single ring, then her voice, low and sharp-edged, threaded with exhaustion. "You shouldn't say your real name on a secure line," she murmured. He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Sophia, where are you?" "Nowhere safe enough to tell you." A beat. "I need your help." "Anything." "I need access to your company's financial archives. Look for wire transfers made 3 years ago to a holding company called Crescent Basin Partners." He frowned. "Why?" "Because it's a shell. A front for Blackwater Ridge. My father, he's been tracing their money flow. Your company's name came up." Impossible, Gabriel said automatically. We vet every— Please, Gabriel, she interrupted. The first time she'd said his name. Soft, pleading, real. Just check. If I'm wrong, delete the call. If I'm right, we're both in danger. Then the line went dead. At midnight, Gabriel was in his executive conference room, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by boxes of old financial records. Numbers had always spoken to him. Tonight, they screamed. 3 wire transfers, total, $2.4 million. Destination, Crescent Basin Partners. Date, 3 years ago. Authorization, A. Montero. His father. The transactions were labeled Regional Security Consulting. Nothing unusual until he cross-referenced the date with company correspondence. Emails between his father and an address labeled rk@ridgeintel.com. The messages were deliberately vague, full of corporate euphemisms, assured protection, mutual benefit, containment measures. But the last few messages changed tone. His father's words became hesitant, doubting. I cannot continue this arrangement. The cost has become unacceptable. And then nothing. 2 weeks later, his father was dead. The official cause had been a sudden heart attack. Gabriel had believed it for years. Now, staring at those digital ghosts, he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. When the burner phone rang again the next night, he didn't even say hello. I found it, he said. 3 transfers, all signed by my father. On the other end, Sophia was silent for a heartbeat. Then he was part of it. I'm not sure, Gabriel said. The emails, he seemed to be pulling away. Maybe that's why he died, she finished quietly. The room felt smaller, the air sharper. What do we do? He asked. We meet, she said. Tonight, Old North Church. 9 p.m. Bring nothing traceable. Before he could respond, the line cut again. Gabriel sat back, staring at the city lights flickering through the rain. For the first time, the empire he had built, stone by stone, contract by contract, felt fragile, a glass palace balanced on lies. He didn't know what waited for him in that church, but he knew this. Sophia's ghosts had just become his, and he was no longer sure whose were more dangerous. Rain slicked the cobblestones of Boston's North End, turning the city into a blur of gold reflections and whispered sins. The Old North Church stood like a relic of another century, its bell tower piercing through fog, its doors heavy with secrets. Gabriel arrived early. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because anticipation had teeth. Inside, the air was cool, damp and still. The candles flickered on the altar, small, brave flames in an ocean of shadow. He sat in the last pew, every creak of the wooden floor sounding like a confession. Then he felt it. Someone watching. Sophia stepped from the darkness, scarf pulled low over her face, eyes scanning the church before locking on him. Even dressed in anonymity, she carried herself like someone born to draw attention. He rose. You're safe. For now. Her voice trembled slightly before she steadied it. But not for long. Blackwater Ridge is closing in. They found out I spoke to you. He motioned for her to sit. Then we need to move fast. She nodded, slipping a flash drive from her coat. I've been gathering fragments. Bank trails, call logs, encrypted communications. It all points to something bigger than corruption. These people aren't just selling weapons. They're controlling governments. Gabriel leaned forward. And my father? She hesitated, eyes softening. He tried to help us. 3 years ago, my father, Ambassador Nazar, was investigating Blackwater Ridge's operations in the Middle East. When I was framed, he reached out to your father for help. They were friends once. Gabriel froze. Friends? She nodded. Before you were old enough to run a company, your father built your first overseas property in Beirut. My father was the liaison who secured the permits. They stayed in touch for years. He pressed his palms together. Then when Blackwater Ridge approached him, he must have thought it was legitimate, until he realized what they really were. Sophia's gaze was steady. He tried to pull out. They silenced him. The air between them thickened, filled with unspoken grief. Rain whispered against the stained glass. Gabriel looked down, jaw tightening. All these years, I believed he died of overwork. Now I learn he was murdered, and my company's money paid for the bullet. Sophia reached for his hand, then hesitated, like someone afraid to touch the living. He wasn't the only casualty, Gabriel. They destroyed my life to protect the same lie. He met her eyes. Then we expose it. She almost smiled. That easy? Nothing worth doing ever is. She exhaled, the first hint of hope loosening her composure. There's one more thing. My father's still alive, hiding in Zurich. He has the full dossier, the evidence that could bring Blackwater Ridge down. But he's running out of allies and time. Gabriel didn't hesitate. We go to him. Her head snapped up. We? I have the resources, the security, the plane. You have the truth. We finish this together. Gabriel, if you come with me, you'll be marked. They'll come for you too. He stepped closer. Voice, low but sure. Let them. I've lived too long behind glass. It's time I learned what it feels like to bleed for something that matters. For a moment, silence. Then softly, "You're a fool," she whispered. I know. And then, because fear makes cowards of the cautious and heroes of the desperate, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away this time. Outside, thunder cracked like a verdict. 3 hours later, Gabriel's private jet waited on the tarmac, engines humming beneath a sky still bruised with storm. Sophia stood by the stairs, the wind pulling at her hair, her scarf fluttering like a flag of surrender and defiance all at once. "You don't have to do this," she said as he approached. He smiled faintly. "I do. Some debts aren't paid in money." They boarded without speaking. As the plane lifted through clouds, Boston's lights dwindled to a scatter of fragile stars. For the first time since his father's death, Gabriel didn't feel the weight of legacy pressing against his chest, only the heat of purpose and the quiet presence of the woman sitting beside him. Sophia broke the silence first. "When this is over, and if we survive, what then?" He turned toward her, studying the lines of her face lit by cabin light. "Then maybe we stop running. You from your past, me from my future." Her eyes softened, though her smile carried sadness. "And if it never ends? Then we fight until it does." She nodded once. "Zurich, then." "Zurich," he repeated. Outside, dawn began to chase the horizon, painting the sky in silver and pale gold. Inside the jet, Gabriel closed his eyes, not to rest, but to remember the moment he crossed the line from observer to participant. He'd spent a lifetime orchestrating control. Now, for the first time, he'd chosen chaos. And her. And somehow, that felt like freedom. Zurich woke beneath a curtain of fog, the kind that swallows both light and certainty. The city was a paradox of calm streets and cold precision, its beauty a disguise, much like the people Gabriel and Sophia had become. They checked into a discreet hotel under aliases. Gabriel had used false identities before, for business acquisitions, never for survival. It felt strange and oddly thrilling to be on the other side of the law. Sophia wore a gray coat, her hair tucked beneath a wool beret. She looked less like a fugitive now, and more like a diplomat returning to battle. "My father's safe house is in the old quarter," she said. "He'll trust you once I do." Gabriel smiled faintly. "I'll take that as progress." The safe house was hidden behind an unmarked door above a bookstore. Inside, the air smelled of paper and espresso, 2 scents that meant civilization. When Ambassador Nassar appeared, time seemed to pause. His hair had gone silver, but his posture was still that of a man who had stood at negotiating tables where wars began and ended. "Binti," he said, "my daughter." And Sophia's composure cracked. She crossed the room and folded into his arms, silent tears breaking the calm mask she'd worn for years. Gabriel looked away out of respect, and because witnessing such tenderness made his chest ache. After a long moment, the ambassador turned to Gabriel. "So, you are the son of Alexander Montero." Gabriel nodded. "You knew him." "I respected him," Nassar said quietly. "He was not a man easily corrupted. That's why they killed him." He gestured toward a small table stacked with folders and encrypted drives. "Everything I've gathered, communication logs, shell corporations, photographs. Blackwater Ridge is not merely a contractor. They're an instrument. They finance chaos. Wars that never end are profitable." Sophia's eyes hardened. "We can expose them together." The ambassador sighed. "Exposure requires courage and allies. The first you have. The second—" He looked at Gabriel. "Are you prepared to lose everything your father built?" Gabriel didn't hesitate. If it means honoring the part of him that tried to make it right, yes. The older man studied him, then nodded once. Then we act. For 2 days, they worked in silence, cross-referencing transactions, identifying links between Crescent Basin partners and a half-dozen global entities. One name surfaced repeatedly, Watson Holdings. Gabriel froze when he saw it. Charlotte's father! Sophia frowned. The investor? He introduced my father to Ridge's executives, Gabriel said. He must have known. Sophia leaned closer, scanning the data. And now, Watson's funding your Dubai expansion. He's keeping you tied to their network. Gabriel's jaw set. Not for long. That night, a coded message arrived through one of Nassar's encrypted channels. A warning. They know she's alive. The next morning, black SUVs were parked outside the hotel. Men in dark suits, no insignia, no insignificance. We've been compromised, Nassar said, already packing the drives. They traced us through the financial servers. Sophia grabbed Gabriel's hand. We have to go, now. They escaped through the rear alley, blending into Zurich's morning crowd. At the private airfield, Gabriel's security team met them with forged documents and boarding clearance. As the jet's engines roared to life, Sophia looked out the window, back toward the old quarter where her father stood watching from the shadows. He raised a hand, calm despite the danger. It wasn't goodbye, it was permission. They landed in Boston under the cover of night. By dawn, word had spread. Victoria Montero, Gabriel's mother, had called an emergency board meeting. Reason: conflict of interest, misuse of company funds, questionable association with a former government fugitive. Sophia looked up from the memo, pale. They're coming for you. For us, Gabriel corrected, and they'll regret it. At 9 a.m., the boardroom was full, polished oak, sharper smiles. Charlotte sat near Victoria, both poised like twin serpents ready to strike. Victoria began, voice smooth as silk. Gabriel, the board is concerned. Your involvement with Miss Williams, if that's her real name, has raised legal and ethical questions. We can't risk the company's future. Gabriel let her finish. Then, in one motion, he placed a folder on the table and slid it forward. Blackwater Ridge, Crescent Basin Partners, Watson Holdings. He looked directly at Charlotte's father. You've all heard these names. What you didn't know is that this company, our company, was being used to launder money for them. My father tried to stop it. He died 2 weeks later. The room fell silent. Victoria's expression faltered. Gabriel, what are you saying? I'm saying the corruption you fear is real, but it's not coming from me. He turned to Sophia, who stepped forward, calm and radiant despite the pressure. My name is Sophia Nassar Williams, she said clearly. Former interpreter for the U.S. State Department. I was framed by Blackwater Ridge after uncovering their operations. And now, with Mr. Montero's help, I can prove it. Every eye in the room was on her, some skeptical, some fearful. One, Charlotte's, furious. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. Is she worth this, Gabriel? He met his mother's gaze without flinching. She's worth the truth. By the time the board voted, the tide had turned. Unanimous support for an internal investigation. Immediate cooperation with international authorities. Blackwater Ridge's name would no longer stain Montero hotels. But Gabriel knew this was only the beginning. As they left the building together, Sophia turned to him, voice trembling with adrenaline. You just declared war on billionaires with private armies. He smiled faintly. Then I hope they know who they're fighting. For the first time in years, Gabriel felt alive. No longer the man behind glass. No longer his father's shadow. Beside him, Sophia was silent, but her hand brushed his, and in that fleeting touch lay something stronger than fear. Hope and the promise of a reckoning. Boston had always smelled like sea salt and ambition, but now it smelled like fear. The investigation into Blackwater Ridge had gone public only 48 hours ago, and the world was already burning. Headlines screamed from every screen. Defense giant under fire for global corruption. Private security firm linked to State Department leak. CEO Gabriel Montero confirms cooperation with international authorities. For the first time, Gabriel's name wasn't in the business section. It was in the politics pages and the danger pages. At dawn, his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Reporters, investors, lawyers, every call felt like a blade against his skin. He ignored them all and stared out the penthouse window, the harbor fading under a heavy fog. Behind him, Sophia stood barefoot in his oversized white shirt, her hair tangled from restless sleep. She looked fragile, but her voice was steady. "They won't stop," she said. "You've made enemies who can afford patience." He turned, exhaustion softening into something warmer. "Let them watch. It means we're winning." She gave a humorless laugh. "Winning? My father's in hiding. Your company's under siege. Someone tried to hack our systems last night. That's not winning, Gabriel. That's survival." He crossed the room, took her hands gently. "Then we survive. Together." The word hung there, together, heavier than any promise. By mid-morning, the world began to bite back. A security alarm shrieked through the Montero building. His assistant burst in. "Sir, your email's been breached. Financial accounts, too. Someone's leaking internal data to the press." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Watson." Sophia stepped beside him. "He's retaliating." Minutes later, a news alert flashed across the monitors. New evidence suggests Montero Hotels funneled funds to illegal Middle Eastern operations. CEO under investigation. It was a lie, a beautifully orchestrated one. Sophia looked up at him, fear flickering in her eyes. "They're framing you, the way they did to me." "Not this time," Gabriel said grimly. "They made one mistake." "What mistake?" "They forgot who they're dealing with." He turned to his security chief. "Shut down every internal network. Redirect servers through Zurich. Tell the legal team to freeze Watson Holdings shares. I'm invoking the corruption clause." The man hesitated. "Sir, that'll trigger a market collapse." "Then let it fall," Gabriel said. "I built this empire once. I can build it again." Sophia watched him. The precision, the fury, the calm beneath it. "You're not afraid of losing everything?" she asked softly. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. "Everything except you." The words silenced her more completely than gunfire could have. That night, the city shimmered under storm clouds. They worked from his office, surrounded by files, empty coffee cups, and the glow of screens. At 2 a.m., Sophia's phone buzzed. It was a video call. Ambassador Nazar. "Baba," she breathed. Her father's face appeared, lit by the pale blue glow of a laptop somewhere in a dim hotel room. "They're coming for you both," he said without preamble. "Watson's men, mercenaries from Ridge's private branch. They've lost control of the narrative, and now they'll try to silence it." "How long do we have?" Gabriel asked. "Hours, maybe less. But you have something they don't." The ambassador's expression softened as his gaze moved to Sophia. "The truth and each other." The line went dead before they could respond. Minutes later, the building's power cut out. Then came the sound, faint at first, then unmistakable. Boots climbing the service stairwell. Sophia's heart raced. "They're here!" Gabriel moved fast, grabbing her arm, leading her toward the private elevator. Emergency exit on level 3 connects to the underground parking. They descended into darkness lit only by flickering red emergency lights. The hum of generators mixed with distant thunder. Every shadow looked armed. "Gabriel," Sophia whispered, "you should have let me go. You didn't have to." "Stop." His voice was quiet, urgent. "Don't finish that sentence. I made my choice." Outside, rain slashed the streets. A black SUV waited at the curb, one of his security units. They sprinted for it, gunfire echoing from the rooftop above. A bullet shattered glass inches from Sophia's head. Gabriel shoved her inside and ducked behind the door, returning fire with the guard's pistol. Tires screeched. The SUV roared into the night, weaving through empty streets as alarms wailed across the city. In the back seat, Sophia clung to his arm, trembling. He wrapped her in his jacket, holding her close. "It's over," he whispered. But they both knew it wasn't. This was only the beginning of open war. By dawn, they reached the Montero estate outside the city, a private fortress of stone and glass built by his father decades ago. Security teams surrounded the property. Inside, the generator hummed like a sleeping beast. Sophia stood at the balcony, staring at the storm fading into light. "You've lost everything," she said quietly. Gabriel stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Not everything." She turned, searching his face, the exhaustion, the fire, the tenderness he rarely showed. And then slowly, she kissed him. Not out of gratitude, but inevitability. When she pulled back, her voice trembled. "What happens now?" He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. Now we finish what our father started. Outside, the first rays of morning broke through the clouds. Inside, two people who had once lived behind lies now stood together, against a world that had learned to fear the truth. And for the first time, both knew there was no turning back. The room was colder than it looked. Inside the United Nations Security Council hall, marble and glass reflected an audience of nations pretending not to judge each other. Cameras hummed like insects. Reporters whispered names like incantations. And in the center, beneath the circle of flags, stood Sophia Nassar Williams, the woman who had once been erased. She took a slow breath. Every sound fell away. "My name," she began, her voice steady despite the quake beneath her ribs, "was once classified as a liability. Today it is evidence." Dozens of eyes watched, some sympathetic, some predatory. She continued, 3 years ago, I was an interpreter for the U.S. State Department. I was accused of leaking information to a foreign entity. I did not. I was framed by Blackwater Ridge, a private defense firm contracted by multiple governments. They used me to cover their tracks while orchestrating arms deals disguised as humanitarian aid. Murmurs rippled through the room, but Sophia didn't falter. Behind their money, she said, were powerful investors, including corporations that funded them unknowingly. One of them was Montero Hotels. I'm here today because that company's CEO, Gabriel Montero, chose to expose the truth rather than bury it. At the mention of his name, the cameras turned. In the gallery, Gabriel sat among diplomats, expression unreadable. Dark suit, tired eyes, a man whose empire had been set on fire by his own hand. Sophia continued, her words cutting cleanly through the static. Blackwater Ridge is not simply corruption, it is a system, built on fear, protected by silence. But systems only survive if we agree to play along, so I stopped playing. For a moment, there was only stillness, the kind that comes before applause or destruction. Then slowly the room erupted. Not clapping exactly, but movement. Voices, cameras flashing, the first tremor of global consequence. Sophia exhaled, shoulders trembling. And when she looked up into the gallery, Gabriel was already on his feet. That night, New York pulsed with headlines. Whistleblower turns witness. CEO Montero confirms collusion probe. Blackwater Ridge executives in custody. The world was changing, painfully, chaotically, but changing nonetheless. In a quiet corner of Central Park, away from cameras, Gabriel and Sophia walked beneath cherry blossoms, shedding their pink confetti into the night. Wind tugged at her hair. He reached out instinctively to tuck it behind her ear. His fingers brushed her skin, and it felt like forgiveness. You did it, he said softly. You faced the world and made it listen. We did it, she corrected. Then after a pause, your company? Gone, he said simply. The board sold its majority to a consortium of smaller investors. The Montero name is history. Does it hurt? He smiled faintly, like losing a ghost. They sat on a bench near the pond, watching ripples catch the city's reflection. For the first time, neither of them was running. What will you do now? She asked. I've been thinking. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. The foundation, for whistleblowers. People like you who risk everything for the truth. We'll call it the Montero Initiative. If nothing else, the name should stand for something good. Sophia tilted her head, studying him. We? Of course we, he said, meeting her gaze. You're the reason it exists. Her smile was small, cautious, the kind you give when you want to believe in something but aren't sure you deserve it. And if I say yes? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, the kind that made time slow down. I didn't mean the foundation, he said quietly. Then he opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a thin band of platinum holding a sapphire that caught the glow of the city like a drop of sky. Gabriel, she whispered. Marry me, he said, not because of what we survived, but because of what comes next. Because I don't want to spend a single sunrise wondering if I'll see you again. Tears blurred the city into watercolor. She shook her head slightly, smiling through it. You're impossible. I'm persistent. She laughed, soft and breaking all at once, and nodded. Yes, but only if you promise to finally cook me that risotto you kept talking about." "Deal," he said, sliding the ring onto her finger. "I never break a promise." They kissed under the drifting petals, not desperate this time, but certain. It wasn't fireworks, it was sunrise. The kind that doesn't demand attention, it simply arrives, quiet and unstoppable. Later, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Gabriel looked up at the fading stars. "For the first time," he murmured, "I don't feel like I'm fighting someone else's war." Sophia squeezed his hand. "That's because it's finally yours." They kept walking, the city breathing around them, alive, flawed, beautiful. The world had changed, but so had they, and somewhere between the ghosts of their fathers and the weight of their own choices, two broken lives had found the courage to rebuild, not as survivors, but as something rarer. Partners, believers, builders of something honest in a dishonest world. The world had stopped whispering their names. For the first time in years, silence didn't mean fear. The wedding was small, a quiet ceremony in a glass garden on the Montero estate, overlooking the harbor where it all began. No tabloids, no investors, no ghosts. Just the people who mattered, Sophia's father, a handful of loyal friends, and the staff who had once called Gabriel Sir and now simply called him Gabriel. The air was full of light, the kind that belongs to mornings, not headlines. Sophia wore no diamonds, only a simple silk dress the color of dawn. Her father walked her down the aisle, his arm trembling just slightly, his eyes full of everything words couldn't hold. When he reached Gabriel, he didn't speak, just placed Sophia's hand in his. There were no lavish vows, no elaborate metaphors. "I promise," Gabriel said, voice low and raw, "to never hide from truth. Or from you." Sophia smiled through tears. "And I promise," she whispered, "that whatever comes, we face it together, always." The officiant smiled. "Then that's enough." And just like that, it was done. When they kissed, the sunlight caught on her ring, scattering blue fire into the air like tiny blessings. Somewhere beyond the glass, the sea sighed, and the wind carried the scent of lilacs. That evening, the world outside their sanctuary spun as always. Meetings, markets, power games, but inside the estate, time had finally slowed. Gabriel stood in the kitchen. Yes, the kitchen. Sleeves rolled up, stirring risotto with the focus of a man who had survived empires and found peace in something as simple as dinner. Sophia leaned against the counter, watching him. "I can't believe you're really doing it." He grinned. "A promise is a contract." "You always sound like a CEO," she teased. "Old habits," he said, adding Parmesan. "But I'm learning to renegotiate." She crossed the room, resting her chin on his shoulder. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were the kind of man who'd rather buy happiness than cook it." He stirred, smirking. "And now? Now I know you're the kind who burns the first batch and still pretends it's gourmet." He laughed, a sound so unguarded it startled them both. "You're not wrong." They ate on the balcony, barefoot, the city glittering below. Between bites, they talked about the Montero initiative, the foundation they had built together from the ashes of their past. It began quietly, almost humbly, a network of legal teams for whistleblowers, safe channels for anonymous reports, emergency funds for journalists and researchers at risk. Their motto was simple: courage deserves protection. Sophia handled international outreach, her calm authority opening doors no government could close. Gabriel ran operations, rebuilding his father's legacy one transparent policy at a time. They refused donations from anyone they couldn't investigate. It made enemies, of course, but also believers. By the Foundation's first anniversary, 3 major governments had launched formal reviews of their defense contracts. Because of the evidence Sophia helped uncover, the world was far from perfect, but it was at last listening. 1 year later, on a quiet April morning, they returned to the Old North Church, where it had all begun. Gabriel placed a single white rose beneath the pew where his father used to sit. "He tried," he said quietly. "That's what I needed to know." Sophia took his hand. "He did, and you finished it." They stood together in silence, the old wood creaking softly, the past breathing around them like incense. Outside, the bells began to ring, slow, patient, forgiving. When they stepped into the sunlight, a crowd of strangers passed, none recognizing them. And for once, anonymity felt like grace. That night, Gabriel woke to find Sophia standing by the window, moonlight painting her face in silver. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. She turned, smiling faintly. "I was thinking." "Dangerous habit?" "Maybe," she said. "But I was thinking about the beginning, how I used to dream of disappearing." He sat up, watching her silhouette against the glass. "And now?" "Now," she said softly, "I don't need to. I finally exist." He crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her. Outside, the harbor reflected the stars, endless, unjudging. "Funny," he whispered. "I spent half my life building things to prove I existed. Turns out, all I needed was you." She looked up, eyes bright. "We built something better, Gabriel." "What's that?" "A life," he smiled. "And it's ours." Sometime before dawn, they stood on the balcony together, two survivors of the same storm, watching light bloom on the horizon. Below them, the city stirred awake. Ships moved through the water, gulls screamed their morning chaos, and somewhere, in quiet offices across the world, people whispered about courage and truth and the strange, beautiful story of the billionaire and the waitress, who wasn't. Sophia rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder how different things would be if you hadn't overheard me that night?" He chuckled softly. "No, some accidents are too perfect to question." She smiled. "Then let's keep making them." He kissed her forehead, whispering, "Deal." And as the sun climbed over the harbor, spilling light over glass, sea, and memory, they stood there together, unafraid of what came next. Because for once, the future didn't belong to their fathers, or their enemies, or the ghosts of power. It belonged to them.